Welcome back to the Afterword. We are so glad to have Tony Bradshaw here with us to continue our conversation. He's helping us understand how we need to rewrite the story of our money. Okay, what are the stories we believe about money that keep us from becoming millionaires?
I think one of the biggest ones, and it's because so many people are born into broke families that didn't manage their money, and I was one of them, is I'm just going to continue just like my family did. And what they don't realize is that they're living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world right now. Most people, if you're living in America, that is. 40%, get this, 40% of the world's millionaires live in the United States. 40%. And only when you look at that number, what's even more amazing is that only about 3 to 4% of the world's population is in the United States, which means our ratio of millionaires to population is, 10 to 15 times higher than it should be based on per capita. So that's why you see people that are born in foreign countries, when they come to America, they realize the opportunity that they have because they know that America is not a caste system. You can actually increase your standard of living. You can increase where you came from. And the stories that I hear every day prove that just time and time again. I'll use a couple here. I'll cite two. One of those, a guy named Dr. Ming Wang. He's a wonderful guy, lives here in Nashville, Tennessee. He was born in China. When he was going into his freshman year of high school, I believe, the guy that was running the show over there threw 20 million children into concentration camps, labor concentration camps. He was one of those 20 million. 3 years later, that guy had passed away, and the Communist Party decided that they were going to let these kids out. That was a bad idea. So they let the kids out of the camps, put them back in schools. His mom and dad told him, said, hey, you got to learn. The universities are open. You got to study this year and catch up so that you can go off to university. And he's like, oh, okay. So you mean I got to do 2 years of school in 1 year? And they go, no. He goes, you mean 3 years of school? And he's like, yeah, you got to do 4 years in 1 year. So he had to do freshman, sophomore, junior year plus a senior year. And he did that and was able to study. He was studying I think 18 hours a day and sleeping 6 hours a day. If he wasn't sleeping, he was schooling. And he was able to get in there. Came to the United States, $50 in his pocket. A missionary over there gave it to him. Came to the United States, started studying, and became a millionaire. So he went from a Chinese concentration camp for 3 years in high school to being a millionaire in the United States. Those are stories that are not, they're there. I don't want to say commonplace, but they're more common than you would think. And that is something that breaks people through to go, hey, I don't have to be stuck where my family is. I have an opportunity before me, and I got to start believing that opportunity.
That's awesome. So that, again, kind of going into that mindset a little bit and thinking through our patterns, if you will. All right. So you've told us a little bit about the millionaire rule. What other rules do you have, Tony?
Yeah, I'll go through. You guys got to cut me off if I talk too much. So I get excited. I love to talk about this stuff. But I think the first one, Millionaire Key, is the first one. I've got 10 millionaire keys I follow. The first key that I teach in my book is called, you've got to develop strong character. You can't build or keep wealth if you don't have strong character. A lot of people build wealth and lose it all. I think it's like 60% of football players, NFL football players, are broke within 3 years, 3 to 4 years of leaving the NFL. Terrell Owens, Warren Sapp. These are guys that won a Super Bowl, but yet they can't rub two nickels together anymore because they don't have any money. That's a very, very common and sad story, but they're not the only ones that do that. There are a lot of celebrities that do that. People that just never learned how to manage their money, or their character got the better of them and cost them. The fastest way, not to offend anybody, but this is something to be aware of. The fastest way to lose half your wealth is to wreck your marriage and go through a divorce. I came very, very close to that. I made some bad character decisions. Fortunately, I was able to salvage that and save my marriage. But I went through that, and I came dangerously close to breaking things up pretty badly. That's a big one. I deal with basically 5 character traits: integrity, responsibility, work ethic, self-discipline, and focus. Those are the 5 I really feel like I picked up from my parents and saw modeled for me. And so those are core elements in my book. There are a lot of other character traits you can deal with. A second key would be equally as important, but it's maximize your time. A lot of Americans don't have wealth because they don't leverage their time properly. The average American, I believe, watches 120 to 130 hours of television or video programming per month. That is a full-time job by most standards. So if you're watching that much video, whether it's Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever, Hulu, you are costing yourself your opportunity to build wealth. You should be repurposing your time, just like your money, into things that will pay dividends for you in the future, that build or accrue interest or appreciating items. Fortunately for me, I was a big video game addict, and that's not the fortunate part. The fortunate part is that I still found enough time to actually build some value with my skill set. So I learned how to program and do programming for internet technology. And that's what really opened some doors for me. But I was playing 20 to 30 hours a week in video games, if not more. But at the same time, I was also learning about programming. But when I look back over my career, that would be one of the biggest mistakes I think I've made, is how I didn't leverage my time. I leveraged some of it well, but I think I could have done even better, and I would have been in a different place. But those are big ones. Get a money mentor is a big deal. We talked about that a little bit, like get around people that are going to help you get to places you haven't been, getting money smart, developing a mindset of growing and learning. Those are what I call the foundational principles of wealth, which is you want to get those things in place before you really start worrying about whether or not you're managing your money well, because those 4 things are foundational to your future and are going to open the door for opportunities. Once you get through those 4, then you get into things like watch your money. I think it's Millionaire Key number 5. And that's budgeting. That's, financial planning and budgeting. Where you're spending your money, where you're making it. You got to avoid your expenses or keep your expenses low. That should be number 7, I believe. Keep your expenses low. A lot of times when people's incomes go up, they end up spending as much as they make. So I love Christmas Vacation. If you guys watch that, Chevy Chase, watch it. A lot of people watch that every year. But he's getting this big check. He's expecting to get this $10,000 or $15,000 check, and he's going to go put a new pool in his backyard. And then he doesn't get the check, and he can't pay for the pool, and he's disappointed. But the reality is, if he would have invested that $15,000 and just waited a little while, had a little patience, like you said earlier, Amy, he would have gotten a free pool, and he would have still had his $15,000. So it's a different mindset, and expenses we tend to want to spend and have what we want now. So those are big ones. Income, boost your income is a big one. When I got out of college, I was making $39,000, which was $4,000 more than my mom was making. So I'm 25 years old with $39,000. She's 45 years old making $35,000. And I thought, man, I've arrived. Like I'm only just now, I'm young. I'm getting started. I'm already beat my mom. I was keeping score. I never realized what my full potential was. I never realized I could make 6 figures. I never realized I could make, $250,000 or $500,000. And that's different thinking. And it took me time to get there. But the reality is, if you redeem your time, you maximize your time, you invest in yourself at the right levels, the possibilities are pretty near endless. Like they are really out there, but there's ways to get there. But that thinking and changing of your mindset, keeping expenses low, avoiding debt. Some people leverage debt. I like to avoid debt. So one of my initial goals was to get out of debt as fast as possible. It took me about 18 months to pay my debt off, and I was able to invest at the same time and have about $18,000. So I paid off about $16,000 in debt, had $18,000 in investments within like 18 months. That was just the strategy that I had. You can do it different ways. And then the last key, which brings it all together for me, is what I call the millionaire plan. It's Millionaire Key number 10, which is create your millionaire plan. I'm a big believer that your math on your money is actually predictable. You can actually predict within a year or 2 when you're going to be a millionaire. And that's a really important key for me, because it helps people get a really solid vision. It's kind of like, oh, you're going to be a millionaire. You're just saying something. It's not really true. But when you put it down on paper and you lay it all out into a plan, things happen. And then you'll figure it out and get better at it. But that's kind of a nutshell overview of everything that I teach. And yeah.
Awesome. That's wonderful. I like these rules.
There's a lot in there. There's a lot of. All right. So when we're teaching other people, like when we're talking to our own kids about money or about careers or about, financial freedom, What should we say? What language, what words should we be using?
When you figure that out, tell me. I've got 6 kids. I'm still working on it.
Not retirement. That's one we've learned.
Yeah, we won't use that one, and we won't say rich either.
No, neither one of those. Those are both bad. Unless you're saying don't be that. But I'll tell you what I've learned over the last 2 or 3 years, because I didn't learn about money until I was 25. So I didn't have somebody to model it for me. And the thing about parenting that I've realized, there's a couple things I've learned. My oldest is 22. My youngest is 10. I have 3 boys and 3 girls. They're all different. They all learn differently. I can't use the same techniques on all of them. I have to approach each one, speak their language, address them. That would be a key thing, is like learn how to communicate with your kid the way they need to be communicated with, and then find opportunities. So when it comes to wealth, a lot of people don't talk about money with their kids. I love talking about money with my kids. When things are good, I like letting them know we've got money. I like to let them know what their right heart and mindset is. We get to do this because we've built wealth. We get to do this because daddy worked hard. You know what? We're not making money right now. So we're not going to go out and spend. We're not taking a $10,000, $15,000 vacation this year. We don't have it. We're not going. And it's okay to share those kind of pressures with your kids, because if you don't share them when they're kids and it's safe, when they have to deal with it as adults, it's going to be really nasty. And there's no guarantee. I'll tell you what I tell my kids right now more than anything. And I'm learning this, right? I'm learning, how do you develop the right mindset in your children so that they can continue wealth when you're not around? Like, I don't want my grandkids to be broke. I don't want my great grandkids to be broke. I don't want my family tree to revert back to the negative. So the biggest thing I tell my kids right now, and I've got a lot I could share here, was, you know what? I'm not going to be here forever. I could literally die like next year. I could die within 10 years. And I really deal with this mainly with my oldest 2 sons, because I tell them, in our household, you have a responsibility. You're the next oldest in the family, and when dad's not around, if something happens to me, you got to pick up the slack. And that puts pressure on those kids to step up. I think the interesting thing about kids today, and this is how I'm developing my kids, is we allow our children today to grow up a lot slower than, if you roll the clock back 50 years or 60 years or 70 years. By the age of 13, 14, 15, those kids were shouldering tremendous responsibility in the home, and tremendous, tremendous responsibility. Today, I would say as a 20-something-year-old, I was still, even though I was mature for my age, I was still immature as a man. And I don't think I really became a mature man until I was probably in my late 20s and going into my 30s. And I'm still developing that because of society. I'm trying to help my boys and my girls mature faster, but still enjoy being children. That's probably the biggest lesson. Now, as far as teaching them financial principles, I don't like starting with budgeting. There are financial teachers out there that go, you got to learn how to budget every dollar, budget this. That's not me. What I believe in doing is teaching your kids how to multiply their money as fast as possible. So when they understand the principle of how to multiply money to turn $1 into 2 or 2 into 4 or 4 into 8 or 16, they will figure out the rest of it. Because what happens is, if you can get your money flowing in the right direction, which is, I believe, building wealth, then the rest of it will constrict itself, because you'll go, I've got this principle. If I spend this dollar, it goes away. If I take this dollar and multiply it, I get to keep it and get more dollars. And that's a principle that adults don't even know. But that's what I'm trying to instill in my children, is you need to learn how to multiply money. And that will constrict your spending habits. That will constrict your wasteful habits. That will constrict all your other habits will conform, because you develop the wealth first mindset. And I think that's what the Jewish community is really, really good at, is that they are born and raised in families that understand financial principles. American families are not born and raised that way for various number of reasons. We could go into that if you guys want. But you have to become more intentional about how you direct and guide your children. And I'm still figuring that out. I don't have it all figured out. But I did 2 years ago talk to my oldest 2 sons, and I got them both to make their first investments. And I went through a specific process with them. One of them bought $500 in silver. I think silver is a great investment right now, personally. My other one bought Apple stock, and he bought it at a time when it actually split and multiplied and went to 4. Now, what happened was he ended up sold it without telling me, because he turned I think $300 into $1,200, and then went and bought some concert tickets or something. I'm like, no, that's not what you're supposed to do. So he reverted back on me to spending. And I'm like, no, you're multiplying. Don't do that. And then, but probably the ones that most excite me right now is my 10-year-old, because he just started helping me in my business. And I've got him literally listening to financial podcasts. And he's 10 years old, and he's listened to probably 30 to 40 different financial podcasts now. And so that little dude has more financial experience already at 10 than I probably had at 25. And so I'm going to be really impressed with what he's able to do in life. But based on what I've learned from doing my podcast for 2 years now and interviewing almost 100 millionaires, is that they can all do it at different ages. You could start at 6, you can start at 16, you can start. But whenever you start, the possibilities are all there. So my goal for my children right now would be to give them the right heart, the right mindset around money, and then help equip them to all be millionaires by age 30. My specific goal personally is that I'm the only financial planner, millionaire planner, doing this stuff that has 6 kids with millionaire plans to be millionaires by age 30. That's my personal goal right now, because I want to be a guy that proves that it can be done so that other people can follow that model that I create. I'm really after creating a system that people can follow, not just a bunch of financial principles. There's enough guys out there doing that. I want to prove the test cases that didn't do that. But those are the core things I'm doing with my kids right now. Budgeting is important. Yes, it's important. Millionaire planning is important. But if you can get them to learn about the heart set of money, mindset of money, abundance of money, and then learn how to multiply it through investing, whether that's real estate. It's kind of weird to say real estate at a young age, but, go back to Truth Jones, the guy that was 10 years old, who's now a multimillionaire at age 14. The stories are out there. There are more than just that one. He's not like just a one-off. There are more than just that one. But that's where I'm focused at right now, is I'm trying to figure that out, because I'm having to learn how to do that myself right now.
Okay. So that sustainability thing is a key. I appreciate that. That's awesome. But let's talk about somebody who wants just to start, may not have the mindset yet. Okay. Holland is letting us know that.
Yeah, I'll be this guy.
Okay. So Holland wants to start. Give us 1 or 2 tips to start him off. We've talked about a lot of things, but let's just give them 1 or 2 steps, because, we know with anything new, if you overwhelm somebody, they're just going to quit. I'm not going to do it. Yep. So what are 1 or 2 simple steps that someone could take to do this?
So are we going to use Holland as a test case here?
Yeah, we're going to use Holland as a test case. He's already given us his permission.
We won't go too deep, Holland. I won't pry too much. So help me with a couple things real quick. How much debt do you have outside of your house, not including your house? Ballpark. 50 grand. So consumer debt, 50 grand. That includes cars, credit cards, whatever you've bought. Okay. And I won't ask you how much investments you got, but I'll tell you what I did. When I did my financial plan originally at 25, I was making take home pay was about $3 grand a month. Okay. And I was spending every bit of it and then some. Okay. So what I did initially is I said, okay, I want to be a wealth first guy. So I want to change my budget. So immediately what I did is I looked at my financials that I had every month. I said, you know what? I'm going to chop my budget up very simply. I'm going to put 1/3 of it into investing, 1/3 of it into debt payoff, and I'm going to live off 1/3 of it. So I took $1,000 and put it into investments. And I'll talk about that. $1,000 into paying off my debt and $1,000 to live off of. And $200 of that was going to my parents, because I was living in a studio bedroom apartment, paying $200 a month in rent. I told my mom I was going to pay her more, but she said, no, $200 is fine, honey. And that's what I did. So she gave me a break. Now on the investment side, and this is where I go to invest at the competency level that you have. Okay. So when you start, you need to invest at the competency level you have. Now, where you start is not where you're going to end up. You're going to get more advanced over time. That's the goal. So your investments you initially start with are going to be more kind of like traditional, what everybody's going to tell you to do. So for me, now I'm a little bit of a risk taker. So I was a little bit more jumped in on the risk. So what I did though, initially is I took half of my $1,000 and I put $500 of that into a mutual fund. And then I took that and made that what's called auto draft. So every month that $500 came out of my check on a certain date, just like clockwork. And so that alone puts $6,000 in investments a year for me. $500 a month, $6,000. I don't even have to think about it. I just knew that was my budget. $1,000 in investments, $1,000 in debt payoff, and $1,000 on stocks. I mean, on living expenses. Okay, 500 into that. Now, how do you pick your mutual funds? There's a lot of different ways to pick them. Now, if you listen to Warren Buffett and some of the other guys out there, they're going to tell you to go with what's called an index fund, like a growth index fund, and low cost. So like Vanguard is one that a lot of people recommend. It has some of the lowest rates. So when you buy a fund or a stock like that, or a mutual fund, you're going to pay a cost to management, so management fee. If you use a financial advisor, you're going to pay the financial advisor some money, and you're going to pay whatever the fees are for that investment fund. You can do it yourself. You can go straight to the fund. If you go to, like, let's say American Funds, you can just go straight to American Funds, create a portal, be a personal investor, do it yourself. And you cut out that financial advisor middleman. The index funds, the reason they recommend an index fund is because that mirrors the top stocks, what are called the top stocks in the country, right? Different companies. And that's a basket of investments. And it can be different sizes, like it might have 500 stocks in it or 250 stocks, depending on what index fund you buy into. A common one would be the S&P index fund. And I believe, last I checked, Vanguard's fees on an S&P index fund is like 0.25%. That's a very, very, very low rate of investment charges that they're going to take. That would be what. Now, I've used a different fund that I don't believe is around anymore, and I wouldn't say it was a great fund to invest in. I believed all the marketing materials that they put out, and then bought that one. That is not the way to do it, but it got me moving. But I did invest at my competency level. I just didn't have a lot of competency at 25. So, but that's what I did. The one thing I did do well, though, is I started trading tech stocks, and that was based on what I understood, because I was big into technology. I was always reading about technology. I had probably 6 different tech magazines coming to my house every month. So I was voraciously learning about technology. So I invested in tech stocks. I was buying stocks like Intel, which everybody knows Intel. I was buying, back in the day, Cyrix, AMD, a lot of different ones, computer technology companies. And I was making about 60 to 90% every 6 to 9 months, give or take a little bit. So I was almost doubling my money every 6 to 9 months. The problem was I just wasn't working with that much money. And then along came my wife, and I started paying on her debt. So my debt was gone, paying on her debt. But that is the simple strategy that I used just to get started.
Let me just make sure I understand. So you did 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
That's what I did.
But you know what? This reminds me, though, of some very simple, and I'm sure little kiddos have seen these, the 3 milk cartons glued together. Right? One's the church, one's the bank, and one's yours. Right. So your savings, you're giving, you're spending, whatever, and so that third mentality, it's a great first step. It's a good visual for somebody who's making that initial step. Okay.
Yeah. And then in that model that you just outlined, and the one that I do, I have a slightly different construct for budgeting, but your living expenses, when I was back then, that was my church money and my tithe money. So that was inside there. But here's the deal with that. Most financial advisors are going to tell you to do 15% in retirement. But this model puts 30% back. Now, what I tell people is, when you get started, set a goal. What's your goal? So I don't like percentages a lot, but they are useful to look at where you're spending your money. So, for example, I try to get people to say, "Hey, do at least $10,000. Try to shoot for $10,000 a year. Once you hit that goal of $10,000, how can you up it? Try to always increase it. So when you hit 10, go, "Hey, I hit my goal. I got 10,000. How can I double that? Is it possible for me to get to 20,000?" And then you're creating a new problem for your brain to solve, and your brain will figure out how to make that other $20,000. So you're always stretching yourself. The problem is people get income stagnant and they get stuck. I've got some friends, they've been stuck at the same income level now for probably 10 years. They haven't changed a lot. They should have been double their income in 10 years. But different people, different things, you get comfortable. But your potential, the potential is there. You just got to tap it.
Okay.
So
we just really want to make sure that we're getting those first initial for that first person, right? We want to have the baby steps. We're going to keep it reined in. So those thirds and thirds, that's a good tip.
All right. We have one last question. What's a metaphor to help us understand personal money management?
A metaphor. Oh, you're getting me into poetry and stuff, aren't you?
or simile. It's like this,
A word picture.
A word picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go look. I'm gonna have to go look up metaphor again. I'm sorry. A word picture. The first thing that comes to mind is this. In your lifetime, like you're gonna work 150,000 hours in your lifetime. 100 to 150,000 hours. That's a lot of hours. Like this sounds like a little California. Like, what do you want to have left after that? When you think about how hard you've worked and how much you've done, how much do you want to have left? Like, what do you want to have that when you work that hard? What do you want your life to look like financially? Do you want to be broke? Do you want to be struggling? My dad's still working at 72 years old. Is that what you want? And it really is in your power to shape it. It's in all of our power to shape it. For some people, it definitely is a little bit stronger, a little harder to do. Like some people have uphill challenges. Others, have different challenges. But I've seen enough stories. I know that anybody can do this. Anybody in America, I don't know about anybody overseas, but anybody in America can do it. But that's the best example I can give is really look at what at the end of your life, what do you want it to look like? And grab a hold of it and shape it. You have the power to shape it. What are you going to do to shape it? Is that a metaphor?
That works. That absolutely works. Okay, so how can people learn more about your work or connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing a lot of things right now. But if you want to you can download my book. I'm a big believer in getting this stuff in everybody's hands that I can. I want to transform the world. So you can go to my website, The Millionaire Choice, and download 2 books. Actually, I've got 2 ebooks. One is the Millionaire Choice book. You can download that. It's called Millionaire or Not. You can choose. The other one is Creating Millionaire Families, because that's what I'm trying to do. So I call one of them a how-to book. One of them is a what-if book. What if the world could be different? What if your family could be different? Which is what I'm trying to do with my family. Those 2 things are available. There's a lot of other resources there. Of course, the podcast is also called The Millionaire Choice if somebody wants another podcast to listen to.
So what was
big things?
What was that? Choice. The Millionaire Choice. I got the Millionaire Choice. And what was the other one?
Creating Millionaire Families.
Creating Millionaire Families. Okay, thank you. I just didn't have a chance to look it up as we were talking.
Yeah, we'll link all that to our show notes as well. Well, thank you, Tony.
Yeah, this was great. We should have more money this time next year, Amy. That's
right. Oh, goodness.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate being able to share. It's really important to me to have an impact on people's lives. And I believe it's a very doable thing. And I think the world would be a lot better place if more good people had money. I think unfortunately, there's a lot of bad people that have money right now, and they're not working hard to make the world a better place. But I think if we could have more people with money, it would be a better place.
Well, we couldn't agree with you more, and we appreciate you being our leadoff batter, if you will, for our theme on money. I think this is a great way to start.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And our next episode is going to be on investing and social engagement with finances.
Absolutely. So we ask you to leave us a review, rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Become a subscriber to theafterwordpodcast.com. It does help us keep the conversation going. And as always, remember, you are welcome at our table.